Sometime in 1899, there was an advertisement in the local paper for a new academy that was going to be starting at the turn of the century. And that academy was known as Dixon Academy. Dixon Academy was from the Dixon family, of Tulane fame. There's a Dixon Hall still at Tulane. And Mr. Dixon had a son who was convalescing. He was a bit sickly, and they figured that the ozone here on the North Shore, the pine forest, would be better for his breathing ailment. And so he set up his son with a trust, start a school, and we want that school to be a feeder school for both Tulane and Newcomb colleges. Started off 1900, 1901. It started off, and it actually did very well. It's a professional school, co-ed school. The boys seemed to have stayed on campus, and the girls stayed in town. There was no real religious affiliation, but they did go to Sunday services at the Episcopal Church on Sundays. The school eventually failed around 1909, somewhere around in there.
I have fond memories of all of these events, great events that have happened during the year. My best memories, though, are the people who have been part of St. Paul's. And it's students that I've been with, the teachers who have been part of the school, too, that I've known over the years, too.
There was a pond in between the school building and the chapel that had gigantic goldfish in it. And the day students had to bring their lunches, and we usually congregated around there. And some of us devised ways using bending a pin and putting some bread on it and a string to try to catch the goldfish. I'm not sure that we were always successful.
So the Benedictines bought it and started a school, and they opened up in 1911, the fall of 1911. And they named the school St. Paul College. Now, the name of the college comes from the name of the abbot of St. Joseph's Abbey, Abbot Paul. But no one is quite sure, and I haven't checked the archives at the Abbey, or I haven't even asked the archivist, that the name St. Paul that the abbot chose, they don't know if it was St. Paul the Apostle or St. Paul the Hermit or some other Paul in the monastic tradition. So the name St. Paul may not be St. Paul the Apostle. We're just not sure. We've kind of taken on St. Paul the Apostle as our patron. The name St. Paul College stuck around for a long time. In fact, you still see some of the old timers with their letter jackets with SPC. Even the old pictures will have SPC, St. Paul's College, on their paraphernalia. It didn't take on St. Paul School, the name, until the 1960s, when they were changing in accreditation and affiliations, and the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, we became a school, and that was St. Paul School thereafter.
Everybody can find something to excel in, and the student who excels in theater is not any less valued than the student who excels in football, or the student who excels academically is not berated because he's not the star basketball player. And I think the fact that we provide a place for everybody to do well and help them find their talents is what we need to do here.
We are part of a global community. And whenever I travel, I always feel at home in whatever Lasallian school that I am visiting, because we believe in the same things: our Catholic faith, our Catholic identity, and our Catholic understanding through the charism of St. LaSalle.
The Christian Brothers, that story is a rather long and sordid one. Suffice it to say, at some point in time, the Benedictines, running two colleges, decided that they needed to make a choice. They didn't have the manpower or the resources to run two colleges, the seminary college that's still being run by the Benedictines, and this school here. Some were against giving up the professional St. Paul's College. Some were for just sticking with the seminary. Both of them were doing okay. Eventually they said, well, our first mission to the bishop is the college, and we're going to give up the professional school. So they were going to give it up. But here's the problem. They did not want to give it up to the Dominicans, another order that had place over in Hammond that they had actually bought from the Benedictines. The Benedictines did not want to compete with the Dominicans right in their own backyard for vocations and for parishes and ministry. So they were kind of looking but shopping around for someone who wasn't going to be a threat, in essence, to their their organization.
To define the St. Paul's experience in my lifetime, I would sum it up into three different parts. Part one, my father dropping me off at the oak tree on a hot August morning, 1967. That was the beginning of my St. Paul's career. I lived here in Vanille Hall for that entire year. Then I moved over to LaSalle Hall.
When I first came here in 1974, driving up the road off of Yankee Avenue, Brother Jeffrey, one of the brothers there, was bringing me to St. Paul's for the first time to live, and he just said, "Welcome home, Pete." And that word home has always stuck with me through all the years. For me personally, in the years that I've lived here, in the years that I've been away in other parts of the world serving our schools elsewhere, I've always thought of St. Paul's and Covington as my home. And I know that's true very much so for the students who have been part of here too. At the time we had a boarding school here, and for a lot of guys that I lived with, this was their home. Away from home it was, but it was a home, a grounding for themselves, a place to be. And I think we say it's a good place to grow up.
Second most defining moment of my St. Paul's career is the last day my son was here. Not his graduation day, but my last day that he was here. It was the final moment that he would be on this campus, and I would interact with him as a high school student for those 4 years that he was here.
Well, I know as far as the LaSallian community, St. Paul's has actually gone nationwide in the past couple of years. We've begun to go on trips to Tucson, Arizona, and even California for the LaSallian Student Leaders Convention. And as far as the Covington, Mandeville, North Shore area, St. Paul's is a very well-known name. Pretty much everyone in every household knows us.
Right after Katrina, our first day back, we had a faculty meeting, and we were also pleased to be back after everything that happened with Katrina. But even the first day of class, you could tell that the students were just anxious to be here. You know, that it was getting back to routine, but it was their home, and it was a good place for them to be. The other memory that stands out is at Coach Bennett's funeral, when Mr. Lejeune had everybody, all of the alumni and current students of St. Paul's, stand in the front and sing "Rise Up, O Men of God." It was just unbelievable. It was a very moving time.
And the third most defining moment of my St. Paul's career was Coach Bennett's funeral, when Charlie had all the alum and the alum teachers and students who were present at the funeral to stand up in front of the crowd and sing "Rise Up, O Men of God." And that really defined to me what St. Paul's is all about.
So many memories merged together. You know, the high times, the low times, the good times, the bad times. You know, I think of students that I lived with in dormitory. Memory of them and being with them was great. I remember the times of tragedy when Dixon Hall went up in flames.
This fire, the one that really made all of us feel bad, was in 1981, when Dixon Hall, which had not been used for about 5 years, it was used to store some books and but for the most part it was an abandoned building. However, the electricity was still there, and we figured that possibly an electrical spark or something set the basement on fire. And there was, going from the basement, the science labs in the basement, all the way up to the attic, third floor attic, there was a shaft where all the electrical wires went from top to bottom. And we just figured that the fire somehow went up that shaft. But that was a very sad fire, sad memories for all of us, because it was such an important building here on the North Shore and so meaningful, with a lot of history to all of those who love St. Paul's, and sorry to see that building go.
This is a blessed school. There's no doubt it's gone through a lot of challenges, be it economics, be it social. The dynamics of the local area change, and the school changes with those dynamics while still focused on its mission.
We continue to be magnanimous to the greater community around us and in everything that we do.
We have a very strong community feeling that comes from St. John Baptist de La Salle, and that heritage is passed on to students every day. The whole thing, when we say, let us remember we're in the holy presence of God, and when we say, live Jesus in our hearts, that's all a part of the heritage that dates back 325 years. And it's such a strong feeling, and it's such a big part of our everyday life here at St. Paul's, that the heritage defines our past, but it also kind of shapes our future and tells us where we're going, because as long as we keep that mission in mind, that heritage that we're so proud of and it's so strong, that helps us to move forward in the right direction.
And lo and behold, here come the Christian Brothers. Eventually they come to America. And then lo and behold, there's a school, which is what the Christian Brothers do. And they bought it from the Benedictines, and they began operating it in 1918. The first brothers here of this district, it's kind of odd. We have the Benedictines, who were basically mostly a German community from St. Meinrad in Indiana, and then there's basically a French contingency here at the school, all in Covington, Louisiana. We have German speakers and French speakers in these communities, and the First World War is at its height in 1918, where France and Germany and America are fighting. So we have our own little cultural biases here in these communities as well. I'm sure that made for some interesting conversations in the streets and among the shops. In 1918, the Christian Brothers took over. They ran it, an all-boys school, Catholic school, boarding school. It was always been a boarding school up until the 2000s. And for a while, it was the only boarding school in Louisiana. It boasted that tradition.
But one of the incidents that I remember about that pond was that one of the students on a bicycle came riding along and was not too sure of his balance, and he ended up in the pond. And Brother Cashin appeared almost miraculously, ripped off his habit, and dove in and saved the boy. And, he became our real hero.
We had just left Mass, and we were back in Dixon Hall preparing to go to our classrooms when one of the students ran up the steps and knocked on the door and shouted, "Brother, the chapel's on fire." Well, we couldn't believe it, but we took a quick look out the window, and sure enough, large columns of smoke were coming out of the chapel roof. And so we lost that beautiful building. It just burned to the ground. It was basically a wooden structure, and we figured that the space heaters, one of the space heaters back in the sacristy, it was a cold winter day, and it probably set on fire maybe a bird's nest or something that had been built near it. And by the time the brothers realized it, it had burned to the ground.
This place is really somewhere that's truly special, and I think it survives because of its reputation, because of the products. As students, as young men, it efficiently produces, as it consistently produces, and it's something to say, great men come from St. Paul's, and that's why we survive, because we have this consistency and this reputation.
I think if some kid from one group would walk up to another one, in another group, I think they would get along fine and, be truly brothers as we, say we are. We're all brothers here.
The fact that St. Paul's has reached 100 years is quite an accomplishment. It's a very great place to grow up, and it shows that we have such a strong curriculum.
The thing, I guess, for me is that even before I got here, the campus was undergoing some radical changes physically, growing population, renovating of buildings. Even the theater, which has been here since 1906, has undergone a lot of changes. It doesn't look anything like it looked when I was here, nor does the main school building or the student center for that matter.
We have a lot of people who have literally grown up here, grown on this campus, fished in the pond as a child, and then gone on to attend school here. And I think that creates a bond.
I especially love teaching 8th grade, because what's so wonderful about teaching 8th grade is that I'm very privileged to watch these young kids come into St. Paul's and turn out to be outstanding young men.
St. Paul's was a home for me as a student. I came from overseas to St. Paul's as a resident student in the 1970s. And it's been a workplace, of course. I've enjoyed my work here. I've been a coach, I've been a dorm prefect, I've been a teacher of many different subjects, and now I'm in administration. So there are just countless memories that I have from different angles, from different, depending on my background and where I was at the time in the school.
School has done so much good for our community. We're very active in doing things like blood drives and food drives and things that actually help the community. I think our graduates, by and large, prove that we're good citizens. We have doctors and lawyers and judges, and they all take those values that they got here and put them into practice. I have taken graduates on the tour of the school and have had men say to me, if it wasn't for this school, I'd be in Angola. Or if it wasn't for this school and what the brothers did for me, I'd be dead today because I was on the wrong path. And I think that all comes into practice here.
The memories, there's so many of them, but the ones that with me are all revolve around community. I have to say, winning a state championship in wrestling, we walked back through the cafeteria doors after winning our first wrestling state championship, and there was a line of parents and fans there clapping for us after midnight on a Saturday night. A home game for football, running out on the field. As a coach, there's just nothing like it. I know they talk about Tiger Stadium. Well, Hunter Stadium is a great thing for me. And just the camaraderie, you know, the faces of seeing faces in the hall, always being greeted with a smile and a wave.
Personally, it's been a place where I've experienced the greatest sense of community. It's been a place where I've had the strongest friendships. It's been a place where people I encounter every day inspire me as a professional, inspire me in my spiritual life. The brothers, of course, have been the community that has most inspired me and supported me over all these years.
But all the memories, the positive memories that I have, revolve around people, revolve around students, students achieving, students growing, students discovering, students being brother to one another, students desiring to be LaSallian.
I'd say St. Paul's is a place that embodies foundation. That's in our formative years as teenagers and young men, and growing up throughout, you know, this culture, this society where morals are in question, where what you do every day, all these outside influences, and you have such a grounded place, you have such a foundational place like St. Paul's for your formational years. It really allows you to become a great person. It allows you to be raised in a very LaSallian way, a very Christian way, and it makes you a great person throughout the rest of your life.
Man, it would definitely have to be senior retreat. That is probably the most changing experience I had at St. Paul's. And you know, all our seniors now this year haven't been there yet and don't know what it's all about, but you can ask any senior that graduated and they'll tell you that senior retreat was a powerful experience for them. You know, not to get too mushy, but it definitely has an effect on even the most stoic of individuals.
Well, there are a lot of memories that come to mind, like all the trips I've been on, LSL, LASC, all those. But the one memory that sticks in my heart the most is my first football game, marching in the band. walking down that field in the lights of the stadium, hearing the crowd cheer, it gets the heart pumping, and it's just wonderful.
When it comes right down to it, the most important thing for me at this place are the relationships with my students and relationships with my colleagues, and St. LaSalle was definitely he knew the heart of the matter.
I think their LaSallian philosophy lends itself to openness and involvement in the community. I think that's one of the founding philosophies, though it was pointed at teachers and brothers toward kids. I think that the philosophy has expanded to where the school opens its arms to involve itself in the community and vice versa.
I have tons of memories from St. Paul's, some more vivid than others, some more embarrassing than others. However, I think one of my favorites would have to be the first time I got up in front of my class 8th grade year to speak. You know, it was one of the first weeks of school, and it was for a student council election. And I was running for vice president of the class, and I didn't know anybody in my class, and I just felt like I needed to get up and I needed to introduce myself, and I needed to just get my name out there. And it's one of the best things I think I've ever done, in that it introduced me to everybody. It allowed everybody to see who I am, allowed me to see who they were, and right off the bat, it helped me conquer, you know, my fear of public speaking. So that's been really great for me.
The thing that impresses me most about St. Paul's, I guess, the school in general, is the amount of alumni that we have here that have come back to teach. Guys that taught me are still here. Guys like Coach Nunez and Coach Williams and Brother Ray and Brother Ken were both here when I was here. And then being teaching here for a decade, there are guys that have come back that I taught.
St. Paul's has really become my home, and I'm really honored that I'm able to be part of the 100th graduating class.
St. Paul's is such an important place for kids, and we are very well known around the Covington area. But not only are we well known around the Covington area, we're well known around the United States, and that we've been all over the place with our school and shown ourselves and represented St. Paul's here in Covington.
I think one thing that I've noticed, and this is by design, St. Paul's has become more and more part. It's always been part of the larger LaSallian world, but just that whole relationship of our faculty with other faculties around the country and around the world, that part has grown so much, and because of that, I think we have a better sense of who we are in the greater LaSallian world.
But 100 years. I'm kind of glad I was here for the 75th anniversary. I'm here for the 100th, and maybe I'll make it to the 125th. You never know.
But suffice it to say that the most positive memories involve our students living up to the LaSallian principles.
Without trying to be too dramatic, St. Paul's has been my life, and it's a good place to spend a life.
But this idea of the legacy, the men are a part of this, and they are a part of it for life on various levels, a spiritual level, an academic level, on a social level. And that sticks with a lot of men. Our Alumni Association is growing because of that effect, and men have tapped into this. Look, the St. Paul's is a part of it. You are part of St. Paul's, it's a part of you. This is not purely of human origin. It's definitely a God mission. It's definitely because it is for St. Paul. It's definitely because it is Catholic in its mission for everyone. That's radically important. No institution is going to last that is not rooted in the eternal, and the St. Paul's is. You can tear these buildings down. You can relocate St. Paul's School, but if it's the Christian Brothers running it and the faculty is there with that mission in mind, that's what makes it St. Paul.